So, Elon Musk recently went on record with the prediction that is, well, frankly, it's terrifying a lot of people.
Yeah, that's putting it mildly.
Right. He stated that we could see the arrival of AGI, artificial general intelligence, as early as the end of this year. Or, maybe 2027.
Which is just right around the corner.
Exactly. And we aren't just talking about a smarter chatbot here. I mean, we are staring down a total paradigm shift where a supercomputer could essentially replace human labor entirely, across the board.
Right. And it forces a very uncomfortable mirror in front of us. Because if AGI can write the code faster or, crunch the financial models better, build the architecture.
Generate the art, even.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then what makes you valuable? I mean, what value do we actually have left as human beings when our output can just be replicated in half a second?
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if you are looking for an answer to that existential dread, you aren't going to find it in a new piece of software.
Definitely not.
The answer is actually hiding in a book that has never been replaced, it's never been updated, and never been made obsolete in 2,600 years. I'm talking about Laozi's Dao De Jing.
What's fascinating here is its sheer density. I mean, the Dao De Jing is only about 5,000 words long.
Wow, that's nothing.
It really is. You could easily sit down and read the entire thing in an afternoon. Yet its influence is so pervasive, so foundational to human thought, that back in 2016, its global sales actually surpassed the Bible.
Wait, really? It was #1 worldwide.
#1 globally, yeah.
Which is just mind-blowing. I mean, if a 5,000-word text survives 2,600 years of human empires rising and falling, it has to contain a core, unshakable truth.
Absolutely.
A type of wisdom that is completely immune to the whole technological revolution we're facing right now. But to even begin to understand what that truth is, we have to start at the absolute beginning.
And that beginning is famously tricky.
It really is. The very first line of the text is arguably one of the most famous sentences in all of human history. It goes, Dao ke Dao, fei cheng Dao.
Right.
Translated, that roughly means the Dao that can be told is not the eternal Dao. So right out of the gate, Laozi is establishing that his entire philosophy revolves around this core concept of Dao.
Which immediately presents a massive translation problem for us today. Because, well, the word Dao is thrown around constantly in modern life, but it's almost always used completely incorrectly.
Well, yeah, I hear it everywhere. There's the Japanese tea ceremony known as Chadao.
Right, exactly.
And flower arranging is Huadao. And obviously, martial arts like karate is Kongshudo or Taekwondo. So I have to ask, is Laozi really just spending 5,000 words giving us an instruction manual on how to properly steep green tea or execute a roundhouse kick?
You're touching on a really common misconception there, but let's push it further.
Right.
Because those things, brewing tea, arranging flowers, physical combat, those are actually what ancient Chinese philosophy calls shu. Yeah, shu. It refers to techniques, skills, or like specific methodologies taught by artisans. It's the literal how-to.
Okay, I see.
But over the centuries, people just started slapping the word Dao onto these techniques.
Oh, like a commercial trick.
Exactly. It's pure marketing. Calling something a Dao makes a physical skill sound, elevated, mystical, high status.
It's like calling a weekend cooking class, I don't know, the cosmic way of the spatula.
Sure.
Sounds great on a flyer, but it's not what Laozi was talking about at all.
Not even close. There is actually a profound ancient proverb that clarifies this exact difference. It warns that having technique without Dao stops at technique.
Okay.
But having Dao without technique means the technique can still be acquired. Dao is an infinitely higher tier of understanding than just a physical skill.
Wow. Yeah.
So if you mix up Dao and Shu, you are fundamentally degrading Laozi's entire philosophy. Dao sits way, way high above technique.
Okay, so if it's not a technique, what is it? I love looking at the literal building blocks of language to figure things out. And the Chinese character for Dao is just the perfect clue here.
Oh, it really is.
It's a combination of two elements. You've got head, which represents a person, and a radical, which is essentially a visual building block in a Chinese character that represents walking.
Right.
So visually, literally, the character means a person walking a path.
A person walking a path. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the fundamental purpose of any path in existence.
Right.
Whether it's the paved road connecting your house to a coffee shop or, an invisible flight path connecting to international airports.
Its whole purpose is connection. I mean, a path only exists to connect point A to point B.
Precisely. Day, at its absolute core, means connection. But because that's such a broad concept, we really have to figure out what Laozi is trying to connect.
Okay, so what is it?
Well, historically, scholars have broken this concept of connection down into 3 distinct tiers.
Well, if we are talking about connections we navigate every single day, the most obvious first tier has to just be other people, right? Like our bosses, our families, our neighbors.
You nailed it. That is the first tier, known as the human Dao, or Ren Dao. This is the web of connection between people.
Got it.
It governs human relationships, family dynamics, social hierarchies, even the connection between rulers and citizens. Thinkers like Confucius and Mencius dedicated their entire lives to studying the human Dao.
So they were focused heavily on ethics, loyalty, social harmony, stuff like that.
Exactly.
So even military strategists, like, say, the minds behind the art of war, they were operating within this human Dao because they were studying how to outsmart and defeat other humans, right?
Yes, precisely. If your focus is purely on human interaction, whether it's diplomacy or warfare, you are playing the game of the human Dao.
Okay, that makes sense. But obviously there's a lot more to the world than just us. So the second tier has to zoom out, which brings us to the Earth Dao, or Dao. This is the connection between humans and nature. It's about understanding and aligning with natural laws.
Yes, and in ancient times, mastering the Earth Dao was incredibly practical. I mean, it meant understanding the 24 solar terms, knowing exactly when to plant seeds in the spring or when the frost would hit in the autumn.
Right, survival stuff.
Exactly. Today, we translate the Earth Dao into sciences like meteorology, geology, or environmental science.
And mastering the second tier gives you a massive, like, almost unfair advantage over someone who is only focused on the first tier.
Oh, absolutely.
I actually know a brilliant historical example of this from the Three Kingdoms era in ancient China, the legendary rivalry between Zhuge Liang and Zhou Yu.
Ah, the Battle of Red Cliffs.
Yes, so you have these two brilliant military minds. If you look purely at their mastery of the human Dao, their understanding of troop movements, psychology, human manipulation, they were basically tied.
Right, equally matched.
Exactly. But Zhuge Liang completely outmaneuvered his rivals. Why? Because he didn't just study people. He studied the Earth Dao. He knew how to read the meteorological patterns. He could predict exactly when a dense fog would roll down the river to hide his boats, or when the eastern wind would suddenly shift to carry his fire ships right into the enemy fleet.
It's brilliant.
By connecting with nature, he basically crushed opponents who only understood human tactics.
But that raises a really important question, though. Because if mastering the Earth Dao made Zhuge Liang virtually invincible in his era, what happens when you master the third and final tier?
Oh, wow.
Because there's a level above the Earth Dao.
Well, if the first is humanity and the second is the planet, the third has to be the universe.
Yes, the Heavenly Dao, or Tian Dao.
Yeah.
This is the connection between humans and the ultimate overarching law of the universe, or the divine, depending on your philosophical lens.
Okay.
So we have these 3 tiers: human, earth, and heaven. The real puzzle is figuring out which one Laozi dedicated his masterpiece to.
Well, logically, it has to be the highest one, right?
You don't even have to guess. Laozi tells us directly at the very end of the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Chapter 81 serves as the grand summary of the Dao De Jing. He writes, "The way of heaven benefits and does not harm. The way of the sage acts, but does not compete."
The way of heaven. There it is. He is explicitly talking about the heavenly Dao.
He is. But he doesn't just name drop it and walk away. He aggressively contrasts it with the world we actually live in.
How so?
In chapter 77, Laozi lays out a critical comparison. He observes that the heavenly Dao takes from the surplus to supply those who lack. It is universally, unconditionally beneficial.
Like the sun. I mean, the sun generates these massive, unfathomable amounts of energy and light, and it just radiates it outward freely to everything.
Exactly.
It doesn't charge a subscription fee. It takes its own surplus and gives it to a deficient planet.
That's a really great way to visualize it.
Here's where I struggle, though. Because that sounds incredibly poetic, but let's be real. That is the exact opposite of how human society actually functions. We don't operate like the sun.
Well, Laozi completely agreed with you. That is his entire critique.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He explicitly warns that the human Dao, the way our society naturally organizes itself, operates in reverse. The human Dao takes from the deficient to serve the surplus.
Wait, let me wrap my head around that. It takes from the people who don't have enough to give more to the people who already have too much.
Yes. Look at the structural economics of our modern world. Think about major e-commerce platforms.
Like Taobao or Amazon?
Exactly. Taobao, Shopee, Amazon, you have everyday workers, right? Many of whom are struggling just to make ends meet. They spend their limited deficient income on these platforms to buy basic necessities.
Right.
And where does all that capital inevitably funnel? Upwards. It funnels directly into the surplus of multi-billionaires.
It's the 80-20 rule, just playing out on a massive global scale. 20% of the people structurally accumulating 80% of the resources.
And this isn't Laozi making some political statement about capitalism. He was observing this 2,600 years ago.
Wow.
It is the inherent nature of the human Tao. It is driven by infinite competition, hoarding, and taking from the weak to feed the strong.
Okay, so we've got this stark contrast. The heavenly Tao is like the sun, giving life and seeking balance. The human Tao is a ruthless, exhausting competition where everyone is terrified of losing their spot.
Which brings us to one of the most frustrating things you see in modern bookstores.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
Because the human Tao is so deeply rooted in profit and cutthroat competition, trying to apply the Dao De Jing to modern corporate strategy is totally backward.
Though you see it all the time, like the Tao of business management or the Tao of sales.
Yes, scholars call this the first button mistake. You know, you put on a dress shirt and you accidentally fasten the very first button into the wrong hole?
Yeah, every single button after that is going to be crooked.
Exactly. If you pick up a book that explicitly teaches the universally giving non-competitive heavenly Tao, and you try to use it as a playbook to maximize your quarterly profits in the ruthless human Tao, you have buttoned the shirt wrong.
That makes total sense.
Every conclusion you draw will be flawed. If you read the Dao De Jing to become a better corporate manipulator, you've missed the point entirely. Laozi was trying to show us an escape hatch from that exhaustion.
So what is the escape hatch? I mean, if he's trying to save us from the endless grind of the human Tao, how do we actually apply this heavenly Tao to our daily lives? Especially when, like we talked about earlier, AGI is threatening to make the grind even harder.
This is where we run into a massive, centuries-old mistranslation that completely changes the meaning of the text.
Really?
Yeah, it revolves around chapter 46.
Okay, let's unpack this chapter.
So in chapter 46, Laozi paints a picture of what happens when society embraces the heavenly Tao. He says that when the world has Tao, war horses are retired to fertilize the fields. But without Tao, war horses breed in the suburbs out of desperation.
That makes intuitive sense. With the heavenly Tao, there's balance. The ultimate weapon of war, the warhorse, becomes a tool for farming and growth. Without it, there's panic, conflict, and everyone is arming themselves for the next fight.
But then Laozi offers his solution for how an individual can find this peace. And this is where translations usually just go off the rails.
Okay, what does he say?
He writes, "No disaster is greater than not knowing Zizu." Now, if you pick up almost any standard English translation of the Dao De Jing, Zizu is translated as contentment or satisfaction.
So the common wisdom is the key to avoiding disaster is just to be content with what you have.
That's the popular takeaway, yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back heavily on that idea.
Go for it.
If humanity's ultimate goal was just to be content with what we had, we would have never progressed. We wouldn't have modern medicine. We wouldn't have global communication. We would literally still be sitting in caves, rubbing sticks together, telling ourselves, well, this is fine. I'm content.
Yeah, exactly.
And frankly, if you tell someone who is working 3 jobs and drowning in debt to just find contentment, that's not profound wisdom. That's just insulting.
You are absolutely right to reject that, and rigorous linguistic analysis actually backs you up.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. Laozi, one of history's greatest philosophers, is not telling humanity to settle for ignorance, poverty, or passivity. Let's break down the actual ancient Chinese concept of zizu.
Let's do it.
It is a compound idea. Zi means to know, or to have knowledge, and zu means sufficient or ample. But remember, the invisible subject of every sentence in this book is the Tao.
So it's Zi, meaning knowledge, plus the Dao, plus Zu, meaning sufficient.
Exactly. It doesn't mean be satisfied. It means having a sufficient amount of knowledge about the Tao.
Oh, wow. That reframes everything. It's a call to learn, to understand deeply. It's not a call to just roll over and settle.
It completely flips the script. And this is reinforced earlier in the text, too, in chapter 33.
What does that one say?
Laozi writes, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened. He who has Zizu is wealthy."
And if you mistranslate it, you think he's saying a beggar is wealthy just by being happy with his empty bowl?
Right. But Correctly understood, Laozi is saying that accumulating vast, sufficient knowledge of the laws of the universe, the heavenly Dao, is what makes you truly rich.
So what does that wealth actually look like? Because earlier we agreed that this isn't about learning aerospace engineering so you can build rockets and become a billionaire like Elon Musk.
Right, definitely not.
That's just mastering a technique, a shoe to win at the human Dao.
That is the crucial distinction. Sufficient knowledge of the heavenly Tao isn't about acquiring technical skills to hoard more surpluses. Existential wealth comes from understanding the deep interconnectedness of systems so that you don't need to ruthlessly compete.
Okay, I think I'm following.
Think about AGI again. If your entire self-worth and security are tied up in your ability to write code faster or design graphics better, you are rightfully terrified right now because a machine is going to beat you at the human Tao.
But if you possess sufficient knowledge of the heavenly Dao, how does that protect you?
Because you realize you are part of a larger ecosystem that seeks balance. You stop defining your worth by your competitive output. You adapt effortlessly.
Like water.
Yes. If you understand the flow of the universe, you don't panic when obstacles arise. You flow around them like water, which is another of Laozi's favorite metaphors.
So what does that mean in practice? Let's say I'm a manager at a company. How do I apply this tomorrow morning?
Instead of operating in the human Tao, where you try to steal credit from your team to make yourself look indispensable to the CEO, you act like the sun.
Okay.
You operate in the heavenly Tao. You give your team resources, you mentor them, you elevate them unconditionally.
And won't people just take advantage of that?
Some might, sure, in the short term. But in the long term, what happens? You become an incredible source of gravity. People want to work for you. You become indispensable, not because of your individual technical output, but because of your stabilizing, nurturing presence.
Yeah.
You become the environment in which others thrive. AGI can write code, but it cannot organically nurture human potential.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, but it brings us to a fundamental paradox.
Okay, what is it?
Well, if we are supposed to acquire this incredibly profound, sufficient knowledge of the heavenly Tao, can it actually be taught? Can we even talk about it? Because we started this whole deep dive with the line, the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao.
It sounds like a total trap, doesn't it?
It really does.
But Laozi isn't saying it's impossible to talk about. He's warning us that it won't sound appealing to the average person. In chapter 35, he admits that when the Tao is spoken, it is tasteless and bland.
It doesn't have the flashy dopamine hit appeal of a, get rich quick in 30 days podcast.
Exactly. And in chapter 41, he beautifully describes the three types of people who hear this knowledge spoken out loud.
The three scholars. So first you have the lower scholars. When they hear about the heavenly Tao, this idea of giving unconditionally and not competing, they just laugh out loud.
Right.
They think it's utterly ridiculous because it goes against every brutal lesson the human Tao has ever taught them.
Then you have the middle scholars. They hear it, and they half believe it. They might try to act like the sun on a Sunday after a yoga class, but by Monday morning, they are right back to ruthlessly competing for surplus.
But then you have the upper scholars. When they hear the heavenly Tao spoken, they internalize it. They recognize its profound value, and they diligently practice it, completely changing how they interact with the world.
Absolutely.
And I truly hope you, listening to this right now, are feeling like an upper scholar.
If you've made it this far into the deep dive, you are actively seeking that sufficient knowledge. And Laozi makes a grand, ultimate promise about what happens when you finally grasp it. He describes the Tao as Xuan Zi Xuan, Zhong Miao Jimen.
Profound and incredibly profound, the door to all wonders. It is the master key.
Yes, the door to all wonders. Laozi is claiming that understanding the heavenly Tao isn't just about finishing his 5,000-word book. It is the fundamental blueprint for understanding reality itself. Once you truly grasp how the universe operates, this giving, balancing, non-competitive force, it pushes open the door to all other profound human thought.
It's basically the skeleton key for human wisdom. If you understand Laozi's heavenly Tao, you suddenly have the foundational context to deeply understand everything else. You can read Zhuangzi, the Bible, the Quran, the Yoga Sutras, and suddenly the underlying architecture of their wisdom makes total sense.
Exactly.
You see that they are all, in their own ways, pointing toward the same universal truths that the Heavenly Dao describes.
It gives you the capacity to synthesize the greatest thoughts in history because you have finally understood the root system from which they all grow.
So what does this all mean? I mean, we have covered some serious ground today. We started by rescuing the Dao De Jing from being treated like a cheap corporate management tool.
Very important step.
Right. We unpacked the stark, undeniable difference between the brutal 80-20 reality of the human Dao and the infinitely giving, nurturing nature of the heavenly Dao. And perhaps most importantly, we completely reframed the concept of contentment.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Knowing that Laozi wasn't telling us to just settle for scraps, but commanding us to pursue sufficient knowledge so we can stop playing a game we were never meant to win.
It is a complete paradigm shift. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it leaves us with a really vital, perhaps slightly uncomfortable question to consider today.
What's that?
Well, we spend our entire lives trapped in the mechanics of the human Tao. We are constantly competing for limited resources. We're trying to take from others to build our own little surplus. And we feel incredibly anxious when things like AGI threaten to replace our human value in that very system.
It's just an exhausting way to live.
It really is. But if the heavenly Tao operates like the sun giving endlessly, providing massive value without asking for anything in return and trusting in the balance of the system, what would happen to your daily anxieties if you stopped trying to constantly win the human Tao and instead started looking for ways to align your life with the heavenly one?
That is a masterclass question to end on, because maybe the wisdom that AI can never, ever replace isn't a technique or a skill or a shoe at all.
Right.
Maybe it's just the capacity to understand the path you're walking on and having the courage to connect with others along the way. Thank you for giving us your most valuable resource, your attention today. Keep seeking out that sufficient knowledge, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.